Mark, welcome. How are you doing, man?
Good. Thank you, Carlos, for having me.
Hey, so for everyone watching that doesn't know Mark already, he's the CEO of Shipyard Software, a company that's designing and building the DEXs of the future, the DEXs that you're likely using already if you're listening to this in 2 years from now. But why should I tell you about it when you can yourself tell people? So what is Shipyard? What do you guys do? I'll leave you to explain it.
I'd love to explain it. So again, my name is Mark Lurie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Shipyard Software. Shipyard is an exchange group for decentralized finance. So in the traditional markets, there's exchange groups like New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, London Stock Exchange, Deutsche Börse. And these exchanges don't have one exchange that everyone goes to. They have a bunch of different exchanges, each for a specific type of user, trade type, asset, because each has a different market microstructure. In the first generation of decentralized exchanges in the blockchain, there's kind of a one-size-fits-all approach led by Uniswap. We think the second generation is going to be specialized exchanges, which have best execution for specific types of users. And we're building those specialized exchanges. So our first DEX, Clipper, is for retail trades and retail traders. It has the best prices on trades between $0 and $10,000. So we launched 3 months ago. We are already a top 5 DEX. We have about 3 times the number of weekly traders as Curve. And in our first month, DEX aggregators like 1inch routed more trades under 10K to us than to Uniswap. And so our thesis about having the best prices is proving out, and we're really excited about what Clipper can become for retail traders and other DEXs that we'll build in the future for other types of users and assets.
For those that are watching on YouTube, Mark is actually wearing a Clipper t-shirt. That's Clipper's logo. And if you go to Clipper's website, what's the website again?
Clipper.exchange.
If you go to Clipper DEX, you can see that the branding is full of pirates, which I thought it was pretty awesome. So first of all, man, well, props for the launch of Clipper, props for becoming a top 5 exchange that quickly. Really curious about the fact that, yeah, you're envisioning a future where it's not like one stop for everything. Because most of us in crypto, including myself, sort of like use either an aggregator or go directly to the most popular DEX whenever they need to do a trade. That would be Uniswap. So why is the future diversified instead of like making one the best it can be for everybody?
The reason is because every design choice when you're building and architecting something like a decentralized exchange has trade-offs. And even the design choice to be flexible and allow for different fees and different invariants, that itself is a design choice. Sometimes you can get better outcomes by constraining the design instead of making it more flexible. Now, if you're going to 1inch, 1inch is automatically finding you the best place to trade. And so if you're using 1inch, you may actually be trading through Clipper already. And it's just never going to be the case that one DEX can have the best execution 100% of the time. So I encourage you to keep going to DEX aggregators, but I don't think you should expect to keep going to the same underlying DEX for every trade because you're probably not getting the best prices.
All right. And are we, when we're talking about all the different types of DEXs that there can be, there are things that immediately come to mind, such as speed, price, obviously, the layer that you're executing on it is also pretty important. What else are, what other types of differentiators are there?
Those are great examples. So how fast does the trade happen? Are you getting the best price? That's not the most important thing to all traders all the time. How large is your trade? The best price on small trades may not necessarily be the best price on large trade because there's slippage, gas fees, where you're going to get the cheapest kind of flat transaction cost. There's also front running. You may want your trade to be, especially if you're doing a large trade, you might not want to move the market. So you might want it to be secret or opaque, so you're not front run by arbitrageurs. And so there's just lots of different, types of parameters that you can optimize around. It also changes on different chains because speed on layer 2 or other chains is different than Ethereum, as is gas price, as is storage price. And so that might imply a different optimal market microstructure. It's also different for different assets, right? If you're trading very volatile assets, you may care about different things than if you're trading stable coins. So for example, Curve sometimes is better than Uniswap because it's focused on stable coins. And there's 100 different niches that you can carve out where you can be deliberate about how you're designing something if you're focused. And so we focused on low prices, and that has led us to have a very specific design that accomplishes that. Okay. And also I would think liquidity is a big thing to care about if you're a certain type of player, right? So if you're, especially with dealing with small cap altcoins, then you definitely can move the market at least in one exchange and cause a mess if you're buying too much or too little. So if those make sense to have different types of exchanges for everything, I would ask you then to sort of like round up that thought. What needs do you see that are currently not being met as well as they could when it comes to like the actual DEX that you can find in the market right now? Yeah. So the need we saw was around small traders. So I'll use that as an example. And what we noticed is that you have these huge headline numbers around liquidity. There's $100 billion locked in the pools of these DeFi protocols. And a lot of people just go to the DEX with the most liquidity. But as you start thinking through it, it's not clear that liquidity is actually a good thing for all traders. The reason that DeFi protocols want more liquidity is so they have better and better prices for large trades because there's less slippage. But the slippage for a small trade doesn't really change if you have, 100 mil in liquidity or $1 billion in liquidity. And so small traders don't really benefit from more liquidity. But to attract that liquidity, DeFi protocols have to provide yield, which means they have to charge higher fees to traders. And so what ends up happening is these retail traders on exchanges like Uniswap are subsidizing whales. They're paying higher fees than they need to attract liquidity that doesn't even benefit them. And that's an example of a need and niche that's underserved. And so what we did is we said, okay, let's just cap liquidity. And so in the case of Clipper, there's not allowed to be more than 20 million in liquidity in the pool. Now that's counterintuitive, but what that does is means that Clipper can have really low fees. And of course, the design trade-off is that slippage gets really big for large trades, which means really bad prices for large trades. But slippage doesn't increase that much for small trades. And so the net is you save more on fees as a small trader than you lose in higher slippage, and you get better prices overall. And so for context for everyone, just quickly, Clipper considers a small trade anything below $10,000. Am I right? That's right. Okay. That's right. Yeah, please go ahead. And that's really the core insight that led us to develop Clipper. And key to it was saying, you know what, we're okay having bad prices for large trades because we're focused on small traders. And that is, that is very interesting and puts some thoughts in the mind of the crypto user that might not be a professional trader, right? So most people wouldn't do trades above $10,000 at all or often if they're just playing with their own capital and their own coins and they're not too active in this. Another counterintuitive thing that I saw on your blog, I think you just kind of explained it
indirectly, but it's this concept that I saw that you don't think everyone needs the best price at all times. So does this refer only to like this difference, like big trades versus small trades, and how some DEXs can benefit bigger trades, or are there other instances in which you see that some people don't necessarily need the best prices?
I do think there's people that don't necessarily need the best prices. Sometimes they just want the best user interface. Sometimes they want to trade in a place, that they just trust more, or that is written in their language. Sometimes they want to trade in an exchange that's more compliant and regulated, so it's less likely to be used by bad actors. People aren't always optimizing for price. I mean, for example, if you're buying a token, some long tail token, and you're buying it because you expect it to go up 10 times in value, you might not really care about whether you're getting 1% better price when you're going from a USD stablecoin to ETH, to that long tail token. And so, everyone's trading for different reasons. But I do think people generally like best prices, because why not?
You wouldn't want to go to the guy that tells you that you're not going to get the best price.
Yeah. But I also say that no exchange can offer the best price 100% of the time, right? Like there are times we have best prices a majority of the time, and I think you can reliably come to Clipper and know that you're always getting either the best price or a fair price. But there, at various points, for various reasons, other decentralized exchange are going to make bad trades, which can work to your benefit. And if that's a better price, you should go there. And that's one of the benefits of using DEX aggregators. Kind of like, sometimes Southwest Airlines sells its seats at a money-losing rate. And if that happens, go to kayak.com and find the best rate, and you should take it. But, I wouldn't necessarily expect to just go directly to the airline and get the best price all the time, because it's kind of a one-time thing.
So you would, this makes a lot more sense to me now, because of course you always, as an end user and as an amateur user of these things, because I'm not a professional trader, I'm not a professional investor or anything like that. I just have my coins and I move them around when I feel the need to. You would say this kind of thing. I think, why do I?
Well, then I've got your back. Yeah. Do you need more DEXs? Not necessarily. Would you like a better price?
Yeah,
I'd presume.
Yeah. And you would also like to see. This is a thought that I had while you were talking about it, because we talk a lot about UX, UI in this house, because my girlfriend is a UX designer. So, and it's always like, she's not into crypto, I'm very much into crypto, so it's always a thing like, that shit looks so complex, it looks horrible, blah 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 blah. And even
it is complex.
And even the concepts of like UX writing, I think, can be enormously improved in crypto. So like the trade button in Uniswap, I forgot what exactly it says, but like it looks intimidating. And then it takes you to your MetaMask, which also looks intimidating. And I don't think most people in crypto, even if they've been here for years, are like too used to sending trades. Like we all get the little scaries and have to confirm one time or two times. So I'm curious if you have anything coming from exchanges that are trying to build like the most seamless experience for users, or what's the cutting edge in that front?
It's a really good question. The reality is that decentralized finance is very complex and very difficult to use. And there's really only a few 100,000 people in the world who have used them. It is not an enormous user pool. And part of that's because it's really complex and really scary. There are a lot of people in the world at this point, like really a lot, who hold some crypto, but it's through centralized exchanges where they can have a beautiful, seamless user experience like we would expect from any, e-commerce store. The problem is that it's just such a big technical and UX jump to hold your own crypto at all that it's just very hard to do. And, I think that infrastructure, in particular wallet infrastructure and self-custody infrastructure that is user-friendly, hopefully will just get better over time. There's a lot of people working on that problem. I don't think the user experience can get better on the DeFi side until that gets better. And until that gets better, decentralized exchanges and DeFi are really only serving a small group of relatively sophisticated people. And I think they know that. And I think that's why they don't try to be something they're not.
I'm thinking about Uniswap, of course, mainly when I think about DEXs. And I think the interface, it gets copied a lot, right? It's almost like, well, it's forked in some cases, or it's literally the same thing. What would you personally would like to think of? This is how the DEXs of the future are going to look like. This is what the DEXs of the future are going to feel like, etc. With this caveat that, as you said, there's only like 100,000 something people that actually use these things professionally.
Yeah. I think the DEXs today, Uniswap was really the first or one of the first DEXs. And so the market of users today got used to the way that works. And as user experience experts know, it's best to give something familiar to people that they're going to understand. And so it just kind of happened from there, that most DEX interfaces look the same. Over time, I think that as there's a proliferation of DEXs, right? There's hundreds of DEXs now, there will be thousands. It's likely that many people will engage with them through DEX aggregators, and DEX aggregators are where the UX innovation may actually happen. And part of that will be through Web3 apps. Part of that may be through integrations into wallets. So it's much more deeply integrated. And you already see that in wallets like Ledger or Gnosis safes, where it's like an app store, and you can swap right from your wallet interface in a much more user-friendly manner. And if that goes to the aggregators, then actually DEXs might not even have a front end. They will just be the kind of Intel inside, or the engine that powers the actual trade. And you know what? That's fine. People use Robinhood, and the trade clears through, well, probably Citadel, but indirectly through, NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. And that's fine. And so I think that that's probably where the UX will become easy and introduce the next kind of wave of people into DeFi. And hopefully, if regulation comes to make sense and grapple with the reality of decentralization in DeFi, then centralized exchanges like Coinbase will allow people to plug directly into DeFi, and Coinbase will take care of the complexity. So it'll be as simple as using Coinbase, and that might be where the real UX innovation is, that engages the millions of people instead of the thousands of people.
See, I've asked this question about UX, UI, must have been every single episode from the time we started the podcast. And this is the first real good answer that I get for this. Sorry, everyone else. Mark wins. Because you're right. Like, I never considered this. The fact that innovation doesn't need to happen at the DEX level. We think of DEXs because that's the thing that now I feel like a boomer, but like our generation uses. But like the next generation of crypto people might not even touch DEXs themselves, unless they're like professional traders or professional institutional level players, because there might not even be a need for that. Just like I've never touched an RSS feed. I know that my podcast has an RSS feed, and I know one person uses it, but I have no idea how any of that works.
That's right.
Consider me clueless, like not a cypherpunk as I call myself. It seems.
That's right. And there's so many examples like that, right? There's the chips inside our computer. There's the engines inside our cars. There's hundreds of different examples.
Or even yeah, like, oh, okay. Let's not go too deep into those examples. What I was wanting to ask you before I forget is, well, it seems like the DeFi user pool, as you said, is pretty small. There's not that many people using these things. But wouldn't you say that Twitter just onboarded 200 million people to DeFi?
That who onboarded 200 million people to DeFi?
Twitter.
Sure. And if I haven't looked into everything Twitter is doing yet. So I saw the headline.
Me neither.
But I would say they may have introduced them to crypto, and hopefully I hope they've also introduced them to DeFi, but I doubt that Twitter is introducing them to DeFi in the way that today's DeFi users, degens, quote unquote, use DeFi. I mean, if Twitter is introducing millions and billions of people to DeFi, Twitter is probably taking care of a lot of the hard stuff on the back end.
Right. I don't know how the back end works at all. Also, like I don't even have an iPhone. I have one that's like buried in my closet, so I need to pull it out and activate the tips on my profile or whatever. But like, I don't use an iPhone, so I need to.
I certainly hope Twitter will drive Clipper a lot of users. That sounds great.
That does sound great. And well, there is like this semantics discussion of whether Bitcoin is DeFi or not, right? That depends on how technical you can get. You could say either yes or no, and that doesn't really matter for our purposes. But you would.
It's a little bit of game of semantics and definitions.
Yeah. And most people mean different things when they say the same word, and it just goes down that rabbit hole that no one wants to go through.
Yeah.
So, but yesterday we were talking about this news with another guest, and we were talking about like how fun is gonna be now that people are going to start optimizing their profiles for Bitcoin tips rather than, because so far in user created content doesn't have direct monetization in any social media yet. So of course you can monetize through ads on YouTube, but people very rarely can tip each other on YouTube, and they have a fiat system that doesn't work that great. And now this is with crypto and on Twitter, which of course is like the most crypto-friendly network. So it's going to be interesting to see the Kardashians optimizing for Twitter for Bitcoin tips.
Yes, it will. It's also, it's a tough, even outside of crypto, user-generated content in particular has a strange relationship with economic value, because in the early days of the internet, when there were user-generated content models, there were sites that let anyone post and create content and encourage them to do that for free. And then there were sites that said, well, we want to accelerate content generation. And so they offered to pay for content to be posted. And obviously you can't pay that much for user-generated content. It's just, it's not life-changing money, right? And what happened is less content got posted, because sometimes it turns out that if you take, I guess you call it altruism, and you pay a little bit of money for that, it actually takes away the altruistic and kind of the just kind of putting it out there instinct. And instead it feels like, well, I'm not really getting paid enough to do this. And so you actually, if you take user-generated content and you start to pay for it, it can sometimes go down until you pay so much that it goes up, but that then might not be affordable in the business model. And so it's kind of complicated to think how this is going to affect user-generated content. I think tipping is a great way to kind of like navigate that, because people aren't paying you to make content. They're just expressing appreciation. And there's been a bunch of models that have seemed to be making that work. But, I don't know that there's a proven method yet. And there might be some surprising results from being able to pay people for user-generated content on Twitter or elsewhere.
You're very right to draw that distinction between tipping and getting paid. They're definitely not the same thing, and they definitely don't feel the same for the people receiving the tip. Regardless, I think it's a given that we're gonna see people optimizing for it.
Yes,
and we'll see.
I agree.
We'll see how it develops, right?
Who are you gonna tip first?
I saw a lot of people tipping Nick Carter. From Castle Ventures, and he's a big Bitcoin evangelist, so a lot of people were tipping him. I would really love to see who can I tip. I don't know what.
Well, I gotta go optimize my profile so you'll tip me.
That's what I was thinking. No, I probably should start optimizing my business's profile. And you're gonna have your first sellouts. People that suddenly that have been criticizing Bitcoin their whole crypto careers. now they're getting tipped to do it.
Yeah.
You also have to custodial.
I'll get on Twitter and I'm gonna tip you for a coffee.
Cool.
That's gonna be my first Twitter tip.
And I'm gonna be Shipyard. I was surprised that Shipyard doesn't have that many followers. I guess you guys haven't been optimizing for that. You had literally 1 follower last time I checked.
Oh, Shipyard for our company, yes. But Clipper is the brand that we that is promoted more, and so Clipper has a lot of followers. In fact, I think we set up the Shipyard Software Twitter a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was your second follower. So okay.
Thank you.
You should tip me for that.
I will.
Just dropping that out there. Man, but Clipper, let's talk Clipper because there's a lot to unpack there.
Sure.
Apart from this, from being the best exchange in the market or attempting to be the best DEX in the market for small trades, what else is cool about Clipper? And besides the pirates, obviously.
We do like pirates. We do like the branding. I think Clipper is cool, not just because it has the best prices, but because it's been really clear about who it's building for. And I think sometimes, that comes through in branding, but as a user, I like going to places where I know it's very clear who they're building for and who they're thinking about, and that fits me. And I think a lot of time that's unclear in a lot of other DeFi protocols. So we've tried to be super clear about that. And, we also know there's problems, like gas is a problem for every DEX. It can, a few weeks ago, could be $100 for a trade. Now it's come down, but it's still not cheap. And that's just not viable for a lot of small trades. So if you're making $100 trade, you don't want to pay $60 in gas. And so we're launching on layer 2s, and we want to, launch in other chains, and we want to go wherever the retail traders are, because that's our mission. That's who we're building for. And so wherever they are, we'll go to support them.
I wanted to go to your website because I wanted to comment on this. I just didn't want to screw up the wording. I wanted to comment on this little window that you have here. It's cool that you have the about and you have the backers of the projects and everything on the same window that you can make a trade on. So I think that really puts across the feeling that you're that this is for the beginner. And that window also has 2 options. It doesn't get too complex or it doesn't get too intimidating.
Simplicity is elegance.
It definitely is. And whereas you would think about Uniswap in terms of simplicity nowadays, I think, back in the day, I think that feeling has started to to die off because nowadays people equate simplicity with the aggregator, right? Not so much with the DEX itself, which as they roll out more features and those features don't directly translate to the most users, they go towards AMMs or they go to LPs or capital optimization, which is not really what you think about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you know, DeFi projects in general are really hard to create good user experiences for because they're generally 2 or even 3-sided marketplaces. And in marketplace businesses, you know, put crypto aside, marketplace businesses, whether it's eBay or Uber or, you know, Etsy or Shopify. Well, I suppose Shopify isn't as much of a marketplace, but you know, these are marketplaces are hard businesses because you have to acquire and bring together 2 users at once, buyers and sellers. And that makes it really hard to be simple because you're actually targeting 2 types of people. And DeFi is really similar. These are marketplaces. Generally, you have to target liquidity providers and pitch yield. And you also have to target traders who pay fees. And that makes it hard to be simple in your messaging. Marketplaces are hard businesses. And that's what DeFi developers are grappling with. It's a tough thing to figure out well.
And speaking about tough things to figure out, you have quite a number of backers, which I was very interested on for Clipper. So at the moment, you haven't even rolled out your governance token, right? Clipper is fully just the platform at the moment.
We don't have a governance token currently. That's correct.
When you have this type of institutions backing you to build something like this, what's in there for them? If you don't have a token, if you don't have equity models right now, what is why do institutions keep investing in these things?
Well, so first I would say that so we do have a lot of backers, and but we don't have a token. We have not sold a token to any of these backers. So I just want to be clear about that. They are primarily contributing to the liquidity pool. Clipper needs 20 million in liquidity, a critical mass of liquidity. And without that liquidity, there's a cold start problem. It won't have best prices. And so there won't be yields. And so people won't put liquidity in. And so we needed to overcome that cold start problem. And so we went out to a lot of institutional users who we have relationships with, and they agreed to contribute to the liquidity pool for many of the same reasons that anyone contributes to any liquidity pool. Now, we also want to make that kind of fair to everyone. And so we actually, right now, there's only 17 million that's come from them, but we've left another 3 million that anyone can contribute to. And that, I believe, will be October 5th when anyone can contribute liquidity. Now, that will be capped per person, so that also at 10,000, so that, you know, as many retail users can participate as possible. You know, but they want to be in the LP for the same reason that everyone wants to be in LPs and other DEXs. And that's why the institutionals contributed, and that's why I think our users will contribute as well.
That could be another very good type of optimization of a DEX, right? You could also create the DEX that gives users the most rewards for being in liquidity pools. And
that's right, you could. That would be a different way to, you know, decide how to orient the design of your DEX, and it would probably look a little different than us and in Uniswap.
Yeah, you know, I didn't think about that one before. It makes a lot of sense. And since we're talking backers of Clipper, it really stood out to me that you guys are backed by the Meta Cartel, which is a brand that I don't fully support, to be honest with you, but it's very interesting that they're a DAO, and that DAOs are now backing these kind of projects, and that you get to see their logos. I mean, the logo's really funny, the little chili with the maracas, all that. It's really cool to see them along with like well-known capital institutions. So how's the process of dealing with that kind of organization, like from a legal perspective? Is that something that you have to be careful with?
Yes and no. First of all, they're phenomenal. It's really great because you get a whole bunch of people in the community who are your supporters. There's a lot more people in DAOs than there are at any one venture capital firm. And so they can deliver a lot of value, and they can, connect you, and they can offer feedback in a whole different way, which is great. I mean, I really value their participation. I also think it's a signal to the community that the community is, participating and is interested in what we're building. From a legal perspective, it's super interesting, and this opens a whole conversation about DAOs. Now,
that's where the paradigms are breaking there.
Oh, 100%. Now, Cartel has a legal entity. They're incorporated. And so they can act like any other business. Yeah, any other company. But our lawyers did extra diligence. They were confused by it. They asked a bunch of questions. You have to go through KYC. And, and ultimately it was fine because they actually have they're like they have a legal wrapper around their DAO. But there are other DAOs which are different and don't have a legal wrapper. This morning I spoke at the Wyoming DAO conference, and cool. Wyoming's just passed legislation recognizing DAOs. And so there's just a lot of interesting stuff. We could do a whole episode on that.
We did. We have you guys, if you're listening to this for the first time, you can go check out our episode with Alan White. We did a whole special on Wyoming DAO law, because
that's great.
It's just great that because it sounds like a dumb, illegal, trivial thing that people in crypto don't care that much about, like legalities and these technicalities, jurisdictions, etc. But once you realize that a DAO can act like a corporation like this, then they can hire lawyers, they can hire research teams, they can hire employees, they can pay people. And this is just like an organization that doesn't technically have it's a decentralized organization. People can draw their conclusions from that, but it just snowballs into a paradigm break that I think got ignored with this Wyoming thing, or didn't get the attention that it deserved. So that's great that you were just talking in that conference.
That's right. And it's really important. I don't think people in the DAO space are, we in the DAO space are Clipper is a DAO.
Cool.
I don't think that we in the DAO space are giving enough importance to that, because there's two elements to why it's important to have a legal wrapper in a DAO. One is because it's convenient. It lets you engage with off-chain businesses like lawyers, like, everything, employment, stuff like that. There's another reason, which is really why legal corporations were created in the first place, which is limited liability. And DAOs today, because they don't have corporations, do not have limited liability. Now, there hasn't been a lot of lawsuits, but a DAO that's not incorporated is arguably an unincorporated partnership. And in an unincorporated partnership, any member could sue another member, and their liability is not capped, right? It's not just the amount they may have contributed to that DAO, it's anything. And second, signers on multi-sig contracts arguably are personally liable for what the DAO does. And I don't think people are properly internalizing the risk they're taking by being signers. Without a legal wrapper, it's hard to have limitation of liability. That's going to become a big issue. And that's why legislation like Wyoming's is really important.
And in very practical terms, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understand from this limited liability company is that if you're participating in an organization that goes on to do something that breaks the law or that goes into any kind of trouble, then you are protected by this limited liability thing. Not everything that the corporation did can get extended to you as a person, which let's say the meta cartel decides to go full cartel and less meta, then you're in big trouble.
That's right.
For being related to that organization, if you don't act within a legal framework that it's sufficient for this. And that's actually super progressive of Wyoming to do this. Yeah. From that episode, we also learned that Wyoming was the state that pioneered the limited liability company. That was very cool to learn about. What was your talk in that conference about?
It was about how to decentralize governance in DAOs and still be compliant, which is a really tough thing. There's a little bit of a chicken and an egg problem, which, I guess I call the decentralization dilemma. I don't know if I came up with that. Probably someone else did, but that's how I think of it, as a decentralization dilemma, which is namely that, in order to be compliant, you really need to be decentralized, but you can't become decentralized in a compliant way. So there's a chicken and an egg problem. People are very aware of this from, the 2018 ICO cycle, but it's relevant for DAOs as well.
It's an incredibly interesting thing, this DAO regulation, and I guess that it just doesn't make more headlines because it's one of those things that are actually important. And people don't want to think too deep into things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super important and it's very interesting.
Man, yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to say about that you haven't so far? Because I love this conversation. I could have it all day.
What would I like to say? I think that one of the reasons it's hard is because there's not clear regulation about it. But regulators are hardworking, well-meaning people, and they are doing their best to fulfill their mission, whether it's protecting investors, ensuring market safety, et cetera, in the framework that's provided to them by the laws and legislature. And the laws that have been passed in the world have a core assumption, which is there's a person running everything. And that is just not the case in DeFi. And the regulators are trying to fulfill their mission without the foundation, without a sensical foundation. And so really, it's not just that we need better regulations, that we need better legislation. And so how do you get better legislation? Well, that's a hard thing. It requires a real interest group and a lobby. And that's not going to just, appear. We have to create it first. And so the more we can create DAOs and build DAOs and do it in a compliant way as possible, the bigger our interest group, the more money there is in the space, the more people there in this space, and thus the more legitimacy and power we'll have to go create a legislative paradigm shift with new legislation that acknowledges the new reality that things can be decentralized and there's not necessarily a person at the center. That's one thing. Like it's important that we try to do DAOs compliantly because it sets us up to change the legislative paradigm.
I was talking about this with my friend Joel Valenzuela, and we were talking about it from a very different perspective. I know it wasn't Joel, sorry, it was Mike Ilias. Sorry, Joel. We were talking about how, because this is a whole other conversation, but I just want to pick your brain on that. You see DAOs and you see blockchain technology as a way to sort of enable social structures and political structures that could resemble communism, or because then you can make it fair. You can make things fair and decentralized, which has been like the problem of actual communism, right? That it's never been sufficiently decentralized and it's never been sufficiently fair when it's been tried out. I tell you, this is a whole other conversation.
Well, yeah.
And DAOs are sort of like the way you would make something like this happen, right? Or truly meritocratic. That's a better way to put it.
So that's very interesting.
Yeah, that was, we were really deep on this one, but
Yeah.
we were just laughing about the fact that then you get these capital institutions investing into DAOs, and they're also happily, yeah, like you have the big capitalists jumping in on top of like creating these structures that are aiming to sort of turn down the whole model. I don't know. What are your thoughts on all this?
First, I would say that democratic communism feels more like socialism. So I have a definitional issue, although others would maybe disagree with my definition. But I think that DAOs could evolve that way in the same way that any free market or democratic system could evolve that way. And, you know, smart contracts and DAOs are just another way for people to organize. They don't inherently lead to some outcome. That's a function of people themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, people have created governments as they are today, just as people are creating DAOs. So DAOs could lead to capitalist libertarian utopias. They could lead to, you know, authoritarian environments, structures. They could lead to communist environments. And because people are all different, I think all those outcomes will happen in different ways.
They could all coexist together. That's the weirder part. Yes. And that's what Balaji calls like the decentralized countries, the nations. It's like where you just have like nations randomly popping up within people's apartments in distributed places, such as the Meta Cartel.
Yeah. Well, I think long term, I wouldn't call them nations. I think the conception of a nation changes a little bit with the blockchain, right? Like before we had, in order to have agreements with each other and contracts, you needed a judiciary and you needed a monopoly on the use of force to enforce the law. So contracts were reliable. Now we don't need force to ensure adherence to contracts, which means you don't need a government to organize people. And so now you're going to have organizations of people, which before we conceived of as nations, and now we don't need to conceive of as nations, but there's still organizations of people. And I think we need a new word for that. I guess DAO is the word, but you could have a massive DAO, I suppose, with a voting structure that resembles a nation. It would be super interesting to see.
It's going to be amazing to see how these things scale and what the first mega DAOs are going to be about.
What do you think?
I don't think we've nearly scratched the surface. Yeah. I go to the Uniswap DAO a lot because that's like the one I sort of got involved in, and of course you cannot be in all of them at the same time. You don't have, it takes a lot of space in your brain even to read the proposals, and it's pretty messy. I don't really like the experience of being there. It could be something like Gitcoin, which is like the only other one I follow. I think that one has the chance to become like the first mega DAO, but then the concept is a bit of obscure. I don't know. Probably something with NFTs then. What do you think?
Yeah. I bet NFTs sound right to me because a mega DAO requires a mega amount of people. Mm-hmm. And I think fundamentally more people are interested in collectibles and culture than are in DeFi and finance.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, that's why celebrity is art and culture. And not, don't get me wrong, like, the latest hedge fund manager, probably a great person, but not the Kardashians, not pop stars. they don't have that kind of celebrity. And so I'm sure the first mega DAO is probably going to be around the thing that most people are engaged with, which I think is just a human psychology thing. And so I bet you're right that that's going to be NFTs in some way.
And it has to be consumer oriented. So
yes.
And NFTs are the best one for that, or you would even say like Tesla, something like that. I don't know about that, but a Marvel DAO sounds somewhat bright, like where people can govern like some collectibles.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, that's right. We'll see.
But going back
to
Clipper,
maybe the first mega DAO will be like the soccer trading NFT DAO or something.
See, I thought about that, because when they launched these football tokens, and the FC Barcelona has some and other clubs have their own, they say that they were going to allow people to vote on proposals. And so for that, you need more or less some voting structure, which could lead to a DAO. But inherently, football clubs are a private business, so they don't want to give people too much power over themselves, because they're also corrupt as fuck.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Maybe the next generation of people, of like DAOs, the first mega DAO will be pioneered by like a decentralized fantasy football project.
And that could be, or I saw this one proposal that it really caught my eye. It was a proposal because now there's this Netflix series, Ted Lasso, which is like about a soccer team hiring an American football coach to like do other stuff.
So, I heard about that.
Yeah, that got a lot of people excited in America about soccer. There was like a joke that did more for male Americans watching soccer than the U.S. men's national team ever did.
It might be. It's funny.
And I think that sort of sparked a proposal to form a DAO and buy a soccer team and try to get it promoted, like to go that whole route. I would love to be a part of something like that. Yeah, you go and buy a team in England that's like 11th division, and you try and take it all the way to the top. I would watch that.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, if you hear about that, let me know. And you know what?
Definitely do.
And you know what? If you do, I'll tip you on Twitter.
Cool. Now I have incentives. We're done crypto. You've done your Satoshi. It has all come to this, dude. I'm committing you right now. If that ever happens, we're doing a special.
Sounds good. I love that.
So about Clipper, because I do want to ask you. You published a blog post about. I tell you, I do my homework about the first 30 days of launching Clipper and having it indexed. What have the second 30 days been like for that?
Great question. Second 30 days were tough for the DEX space in general, and especially for retail trades, because gas spiked. I mean, gas went up to, it could be $100 for a trade. And so gas and Ethereum spiked. And so trade volume decreased across the board. For everyone listening, the cost of a trade is its price plus the gas fee, which is flat. It's kind of like if you do a credit card transaction, the merchant gets charged, 23 cents plus 2.9% of the purchase, and gas is the 23 cents. And so, so gas really hurts small trades. But then in the last couple of weeks, gas has come down and trading volumes have skyrocketed back up. So I think our third 30 days is doing great. And we'll be on layer 2 soon, and we'll be integrating into more DEX aggregators like 0x. And so I think the future is bright.
I think you would even. I'm trying to find like the best. The best way to phrase it. Okay, let me go a step back from what I wanted to ask. What's the process of launching something like this from scratch? Like, are you? Yeah, because I cannot imagine just how it looks like to take a DEX and put it out. What's that like?
It's very hard. I mean, there's a lot to discuss there, from regulatory to getting the initial liquidity to, promotion and user acquisition. For us, and I think in general, business, the hardest part of business is acquiring customers.
Yeah.
And we felt we had a hypothesis that we'd have the best prices, but that's not enough because people have to discover you. And so our strategy and our go-to-market was very much through DEX aggregators, because if we have the best prices and we're integrated into the DEX aggregators early on, then we should come up at the top when people search for a given trade.
Up for success, yeah.
Yes, and so our go-to-market and launch was very much about building relationships with the DEX aggregators, and so we got both 1inch and 0x to participate in liquidity for Clipper. And so we have a strong relationship with them. They integrated us from the start. And because we had best prices, they drove a lot of users to us. Not because they were even doing us any favors, but because we had the best prices. But of course, we have to be integrated in order to get credit for that. And so that was really our go-to-market. That's how we've gotten so much trade volume so quickly, and become a top 5 DEX. So I think that's a very achievable go-to-market to get yourself out there, and then from there build a community.
And when we're talking top 5, for people that don't know how DEXs are ranked,
I'm thinking in number of users. That's what I think is the most important thing. So
I would think that's the most important metric as well.
Yeah, there's Uniswap, there's SushiSwap, and there's a couple others, and we're depending on the day and the week.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about the money Legos concept, right? Like, if you actually manage to build a Lego that fits well in the structure, it sort of puts itself into place, right? You don't have to be figuring where to place it. Of course, you have at some point, but like, it's easier to slide in there than what it would be for you to just go to compete with the Binances of the world.
That's right. And that's also why I think as this space evolves and gets more sophisticated, it's going to be more important that you build the perfect Lego to fit into the system. And that's a big reason of why I think there's going to be many different exchanges instead of one exchange, because you need different Legos to fit into an engine has many parts.
This centralized versus decentralized exchanges conversation, I think, has died down a little bit. Like, people are starting to more intuitively know the difference between each other and the use case for each. But do you see any frontiers where there's still an ongoing competition between both?
I think both have their place. I don't think it's winner take all. I think there should be centralized exchanges, and there will be decentralized exchanges, and for different use cases. I think for our parents, they're probably just going to use a centralized exchange. By the way, centralized exchanges can be inherently more compliant, and they can integrate into the fiat system, and they can be faster than decentralized exchanges. They're always going to be faster. You can have an order book model for an exchange on a centralized exchange because they're so fast. It's really hard to imagine an order book model on the blockchain ever being as fast. And so, and sometimes an order book model is better for specific types of trades and traders than an automated market maker, which is what tends to work in the blockchain. So different users, different use cases, I think they'll coexist together and hopefully cooperate together. We would like the DEXs we build to work together with centralized exchanges.
And when you were dealing with from DEX aggregators, was there anything in particular interesting in the differences between them? Because, for example, I know 1inch and Shapeshift operate pretty differently.
The biggest difference between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges is that centralized exchanges are custodial and decentralized exchanges are non-custodial. And the regulatory regimes around the world separate. They draw a big line between, are you holding other people's money for them? Do you have control over their money, or do you not? And most of the regulation is around, because they're protecting people, right? Most of the regulation is around, do you hold other people's money for them? And do you have control over that? And so centralized exchanges do that. They hold money for people. They're custodial, and thus, they have to adhere to the regulatory regime that exists. Decentralized exchanges are non-custodial. Frankly, wasn't really even contemplated by current regulatory regimes. And so in many ways, they don't have to have those burdens. They can do a lot more things. And so one can do a lot more than an exchange that's custodial. Now, I forget if Shapeshift is custodial or not, but
I think it is completely non-custodial. They just went full DAO.
Okay, well, good for them. But that really is a big difference between DEXs and decentralized exchanges. Now, you also have, even if you're non-custodial, you also have if you're facilitating trades, that introduces a bunch of complexities. And that also is dependent on which jurisdiction you're in and where the users are. So I don't know, I guess there's a whole lot to unpack there.
There is these conversations with all the different tangents that you can go on can last forever. I'm sure like you've also had that happen on the table multiple times. It's very close to time to wrapping up, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed now. Is there anything that you feel like you didn't touch on that you'd like to expand a little bit on before we finish?
I think we've covered a lot. I really appreciate the questions. Super interesting conversation. A lot more we could dig in on. I would encourage everyone listening to trade on Clipper, get the best prices, try it for yourself. And also follow Shipyard Software. We're going to be putting out a lot of educational content and about trading and the issues we've talked about today. I think a core part of our mission is helping educate and communicate some of these issues and be part of the conversation and help build the future together. So if you're interested in that kind of content and learnings, then follow Shipyard Software as well. And if you're a developer, we're hiring.
Cool. So, and are you yourself active on any platform, on Twitter or something?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Mark Lurie. MarkLurie. And you can follow me there.
Yeah, so everyone go follow Mark, and always welcome to come back, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. For people that want to learn more about Clipper, it's clipper.exchange. For people that want to build a DEX, they can find your company as well. And I really enjoy this. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Carlos, and thanks everyone for listening.
Bye, everyone.